morning.
Good morning, my dear. How are you today?
I'm doing so well. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's a wonderful day. It's sunshiny outside. In fact, you
It
might even
is.
see some of that through the back of the screen here. It's all bright and shiny.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at
Oh,
my main window, and I was like, well, I'm gonna have to dodge these little rainbows because I have one of those
little
screens.
rainbows. Yep.
And actually, was the one who was like, yeah, you should use that so no one can see in. But
I
then, like,
like
oh,
that. And I see the
well,
rainbows. Yeah, I want to do this with you. Whoop, look at them rainbows. Girls got the rainbows.
I thought it was a helpful positioning for this morning.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And really it's the other way around, folks. She is on the floor and I am in a chair, but it's like turned around in energy. So if it looks like my head is at the bottom of the screen, it is.
It is.
It's not an optical
Whoa.
illusion.
You had a good weekend, busy weekend.
I had a busy weekend. I worked the fair, of course, on Saturday with you, and we had a great time, as always. And then Sunday, I was at my office all day long having fun and, clients and working with others. So, yeah, busy and fun. Here we go.
Always. Do you like it feels like the fall is kind of here finally, and I'm really getting excited about that.
Well, I am too for a minute. And that's what's really hard for me. I get really excited. If you were to come over to my house, you'd go pumpkin coffee, pumpkin pudding, pumpkin cookies, pumpkin
Uh,
apple cider. And that's what you'd see. And I get real thrilled about it, right? I'm like, yeah, there we go. Until we get about a 40-degree day and I can't go sit outside. And now I'm like, you don't like it like that.
yeah.
Where's my heat? I'm
Well,
so
in
sad. Yeah.
saying we're gonna have a, do you think we're gonna have a particularly cold winter?
Bite your tongue. No, Frosty the Snowman. I don't want that.
I
No.
know. Well, somebody said
No.
that they were projecting
Yeah.
like inches of snow, and I was thinking, no way. But then we saw we kind of had a pretty mild summer.
Make a list of those people. We'll banish them.
Yes,
No,
happened.
it won't happen. Well, again, like all things in life, the weather is unpredictable. And so we'll just see what happens. But I really don't like the snowbanks.
No,
I
that's
don't
why we
want
live in
that.
Texas.
Right. And I don't really care for my red wine to be mulled red wine. I don't like that. I
No.
like it to be outside with the short sleeve shirt. So we'll
Well,
see.
we live here for the weather and the crazy
Yes.
drivers. That's
Oh
what
my
Texas
gosh.
has. That's
Let's
all
talk about
Texas
can we,
has.
can we, can we, can we?
Yeah.
Now, before I do that, we have a very faithful listener, and I want to throw a hey Kelly, happy day. Keep
Yeah,
keep
yeah.
going strong, girl. You got it. You
She's
do
so
you.
cute.
You're so sweet. She is. She's amazing. And she's got some struggles, but she's got it. She's working it out. So,
Don't we
Kelly, keep it
all?
listening and keep it shining. We do. Now
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about the road rage because, boy, I'm upset. I will tell you, I'm old first, just in case you were wondering that. Okay. Yes, I do dye my hair. Can you tell? And so that's okay. Another story all by itself. But I once upon a time learned how to drive. And there was
Yes.
these really weird things, these blinky lights that are on that steering wheel. And even in the most wonderful cars, they tend to be still where your hands are, so you can actually use them.
Mm-hmm.
One goes to the right and one goes to the left. They're called signal lights. And we had to learn how to use those when we took driver's ed. Yes, we did do driver's ed in a car. Horses don't have signal lights. And so I know that I learned how to drive using courtesy. There we go, get it out eventually. And technique. I cannot
Safety.
tell you how many times I have been in a situation. This weekend was really kind of remarkable. I can't tell you how many cars. And yes, I was doing probably about 76. Yeah, okay, slap my wrist. And these people were doing 110. And they were coming around me like speed demons. And they
Mm-hmm.
weren't all the fancy Porsches of the world. They were everybody. And some of them looked worse than my car. And I thought, your whole car is going to shake apart in about 3 seconds if you keep driving 110. But people are not using
That's
signal
car
lights.
screaming too.
I know the car is screaming, help me, he's going to kill me. Yes. And people swerving. I had someone, we were going for the 8th. Yesterday was the 8th. No, Saturday was the 8th. I got to get this right. 8th time to go get our car fixed
Oh
this
God.
past month. Oh, it's back at the shop today. So this is number 9.
Oh Lord, have mercy.
And leave it to the intuitive. I know what's wrong with it. And they better fix it
Lord.
this time.
Oh
And
Lord.
so We had literally, we were in a singular lane turn to the left, and we're waiting for cars to go through. And this idiot from behind, with a car about 20 years older than mine, and that, that's probably as old as I am altogether. And this idiot pulls around pulls around and goes in front and cuts off the cars in the other lane and then gives me the finger. Yeah, that's what it is. It's the one in the middle. It's not the hands of a wave. And I thought, seriously? And he didn't even use a signal light? He should have used a lot more in a signal light. He should have used his noggin not to do that. My point, and this is where I want to just say this, people, we want to talk to you. We want you to be alive. You may not think that there is such thing as bye-bye, but the bottom line is it doesn't take but a second for you to take someone else's life. 110 is not the speed limit. And I know that once upon a time we had people called sheriffs and police that used to patrol the roads. And I'm not sure where they're all hanging out these days, but just in case they are hanging out somewhere, help! Get back on the roads.
We need you, the bat signal.
We need you. The bat signal's going up. Slow down, people. Slow down. I want to see you. Slow down.
Do you think that when people, if there are accidents on the road, right, when there's a loss of life, it does happen, especially when people are not paying attention. Yep. Texas is pretty high in mortality.
Right.
Literally what you just said. Do you think that so to speak, I mean, that's kind of a new thing. Like, cars haven't been around all that often.
Right.
Right. But it is, I mean, that's a chosen out quite a bit.
Well, it is. And it's a real selfish out because it usually involves other people. And the thing about it, and throw a little, and people from Louisiana are not be happy with me. And I did a little research on this, and believe it or not, the highest level of road rage is in Louisiana.
Oh, wow.
So yesterday I rode around on the freeways and the highways, actually all weekend. And I think I proved that wrong. I think it's Texas. But it is an exit. And you're right. It is about exiting and, empowerment. If you're struggling at home and you feel like you are, just kind of listening to, someone else and they're undermining you, or you feel betrayed, or you feel that your voice isn't heard and you're suffering, and you get behind the wheel of a car, all of a sudden now you become the next best speed demon, right? Trying to win an award. The only thing you're going to win is either a wrecked car, life or death situation, or someone else being hurt and injured. So please, people, slow down. Don't take out your frustrations behind the wheel of a car. The most confused spirits are from accidents. Yeah. And everyone hear that. The most confused, disoriented energies ever are those that pass in a car accident or train accident, anything that is a violent accident. So don't be that spirit.
And you and I have talked about this, but why is?
Well, because they don't, it's such a fast action that they don't recognize what's happening. They can feel, and, sometimes they can even feel the heat if there was if the vehicle caught fire. Sometimes that happens, or the heat from just the road and the tarmac and the tires. Sometimes they smell the rubber. It's very disorienting. There's usually lights involved. And so they're already in a state of mind of, okay, well, I know I need to exit the vehicle. If they haven't been thrown out of it, I've got to exit. And that you can feel them and sense them and see them kind of trying to climb out of the vehicles. And those that see their loved ones, it's just like anything else. If you're not sure where you are, and all of a sudden your mom who's been dead for 10 years is going like this to you, you're probably going, hell no, mom, I'll see you later. I'm not dead. Do you see? So you're more apt to kind of meander around and watch the cleanup and watch what's happening. And because you don't know what's going on and you can't communicate to the first responders or those that stop because you're not really alive. And so it's just I see it, and I cross a lot of them over. They're like, I don't know where I am. My mom keeps telling me, or my grandfather, or whomever, to follow them, and I'm afraid to because I don't know why no one is listening to me. Am I still sleeping?
Oh my gosh! Yeah. Oh my gosh! So essentially, what is that sort of damaging to the soul, that confusion and that sort of like, who wants to watch the cleanup of, especially if it's an accident, right? So what do you think? Does that just add density? Like, do they find it harder to leave later?
And that's a really good question. I'm not really sure the answer, Sophia. I'm really feeling like there's a gray area there, because I do see that there's just a when they realize they are better off to go forward, it does become a realization that they are, that they are not in a human form anymore, that they are a spirit form. And so, yes, I'm sure there's a lot of emotion wrapped around that. Do I feel that the soul suffers? I'm sure the soul takes a bit of a hit, but I do feel that, again, that spirit recovers. And I feel that after this understanding of what exactly is going on, then we're more in a situation to say, okay, I've had a bad accident. My family's here. I know they're in heaven, dimensional energy, wherever they may be. And I am going to follow them because they see me and I see them. You see?
Wow.
So if they see me, at least I'm acknowledged. I'm not standing here going, hey, Mr. You, police officer, help me. You see?
Do they know? So this is something I always say in the conversation I can, because I think it's important for people that are still alive to hear this, because there is a time when they will pass and hopefully they'll remember that this was said. But also two energies that are past, but it's like crossover, you can come right back, correct?
Sure. Yes.
I mean, so it's not a...
No. What happens to people, and again, I really don't believe that the window of time shuts down. I believe the light is always there. I mean, it's a choice. We were given free will. That wasn't snatched at death. It's something that you can continue to have. And so if you choose not to go through the light didn't leave you, you left the light. So at some point you can go back to the light. You can choose that direction. Once you do that, you're kind of in that energy. You understand, because your loved ones that can hear you and see you, and you can hear and see them, are telling you, you're with us now. This is what's happened. And probably a little bit of the memories coming back at that point. You were in a bad accident. It's okay. You're with us. It's Earth is living on Earth right now is put aside. This is where you are. And then at that point, the energy can go back and forth. It's kind of like giving directions. The first time you go to the grocery store, when you move to a new part of town, you're terrified, right? You're like, I'll never find my way back.
That's so true.
And so you get there and you're like, whoa, there's all these, and in this case, people, right? Instead of canned goods, right? And oh my God, they all know me. I like this place. They seem real friendly. But I can also go back, because I know that once upon a time I used to live there on an earthbound energy, in an earthbound energy. So I do feel that there is sometimes a little bit of a weight. Sometimes energy would want to go back. There are times, and think of it based on your circumstances. Say you're in an abusive relationship and you ended up getting beaten to death, heaven forbid, and that's how your spirit. You may not be so inclined to jump right on the bus back through the light to go, hey, here I am. You might want to just kind of mull it over a while, right?
Oh, wow. Just because you're like, whoa, I'm just barely, that was so crazy. I'm not ready to go into this big, situation, so to speak.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, I've never thought about it from that perspective.
And some people, and I truly believe this, again, we do go to the other side of their personality. I'm a firm believer, and no one is ever going to talk me out of that. I don't believe we're all zombies walking around saying, I love you, you love me. I really don't see that. I've never seen that, okay? And I know I've got colleagues that disagree with me, but, we each have our own opinion.
Really?
But, gosh, yeah. Don't get me started, because you know me. Moving on. So anyway... I'm serious. If my loved one's on the other side, I want to hear the dirt. I want to hear them say to me, you forgot to feed the cat this morning. Okay? I don't want them to come to me and go, I love you so much, and you will have a beautiful life. BS. You treated me like crap when you were here, and now you're telling me kumbaya? BS. You see? So we do want the authenticity of energy. And I do believe people go with their personalities. they may nullify some of the anger and the frustration and the hostility, but they're not a whole different person. They're just a little bit more muted when it comes to the heavy emotions.
Well, that's a very interesting point, because we've talked about before that everybody's soul has a melody.
Yes.
And it's interesting because when we really break that thought form down, you could have a soul that is innately curious and maybe has a little bit of a temper issue, and that's in the melody.
Yes.
And then also there might be a propensity to insecurity, and that's the melody. And then each lifetime, those things are still true to a degree or another, whether you're a female, male, a warrior, though you're going to find tendrils of, well, it's weird. Every lifetime I wind up in some scientific background or some investigatory. It's like, well, that's your energy, and you're carrying that.
Right. Absolutely.
And that.
And I like to look at it. Well, when I say that, I like to look at it. I just heard it, so I do like it. But I'll remember it for later, right? You'll probably say it back. Someone will mirror it back, and I'm like, whoa, that's profound. Because my guide's talking, I don't remember.
Yep. Yeah.
But think of it this way. Each of us go to, the other side, say, for instance, with our own melody. And that was so perfectly said. I love that. With our own melody. When we get to the other side, it's like we join the orchestra, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk about a collective, it doesn't mean all of a sudden now there's 45 different souls in my body and I'm now expanded and collective. Okay.
Right.
I'm not walking around with everybody's baggage necessarily. What a beautiful sound when everybody's energy comes to the center in the orchestra.
Well, and I just heard that when we get off our melody, it's an automatic tuning. Like you're back on key. It's almost like, oh my God, I was supposed to be curious, but I got burned one time, so I shut that down. When you cross back over, you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot. Like, I do feel confident to be curious. I do feel it's almost like you just get back on key, and then you kind of like, not depressing, but like how frustrating to know that as you go back into the human experience, if you love the way your melody is, and we recognize that there's a good chance we might come back a little bit battered and off key again, because that's what that's part of what we're supposed to do, I guess.
Right.
Hard. It would be
hard. It'd be really, really hard. Rita, I just got your message in my head. Hi, how are you? Glad you're listening. I know you're going to be listening. I just heard Rita said she didn't mention me. So here I'm mentioning you. Sorry. I know I'm off task. I did. I heard it, Rita.
Rita in the living world?
Rita's in the living world.
Okay.
But I just felt her. And it would be like, again, when she does listen to this whenever it's posted. That. I just heard her say she didn't mention me. So here I did.
Oh, yes. Here we go. I love that.
Getting it going.
That is so fascinating.
Well, and I really do love it about, again, putting in it such as the melody, because each of us have a melody, and, we fine tune the melody. Exactly. And as each lifetime comes before us, we add to the melody, whether we add, a different richness to it, a different experience to it, however it may be. Maybe we decide that we can use and pick up another instrument to play as well. And again, that's the vibration of energy. For those of you that think we're actually bringing trumpets with us and clarinets, I don't know. But we can view it that way. But it's also about a vibration, a soulful sound.
Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting to me, when I connect to the angelic world through a deep meditation. They have a very high-pitched tone to them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's the way I hear them. Now, if someone said to me, no, they don't, they have a very low tone, I'd get good. That's good that's the way you're perceiving it. Excellent. I love that. The more the merrier. There are a lot of different views on it, but you'll notice one thing for certain is that they sound different.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a melody. And so we have a melody as well.
Within that sort of melody, because the reality is we could sort of interchange melody and vibration, because sound is physical vibration. But
absolutely,
there is sort of, it would then be true that, say, somebody who has been making poor life decisions, I'm very off key from what I should be, and then there is almost like a stratification or like a sort of a organization around I would not feel good or feel right or feel comparable to a group of people who are more on key for a multitude of reasons. They're not going to probably enjoy the notes I bring to a song, and I might be uncomfortable with how great and on tune they are, and I might be resistant to staying around them.
Right.
And so I think my point I guess I'm getting at is we are more likely to be around and with the people we're supposed to be, true we can be to the original melody. Because that's all we can be. It's like, I can't become you. I can't sing your song. But if you're singing a pretty close, authentic song, and I am too, we'll be able to duet.
Right.
But we might not. You might be like, I'm going to go sing with somebody else. You're really not. I mean,
you're like, one more lifetime, one more past life. Let's get this right.
Well, if the melody is kind of still true across that to a degree. I'm sure we mix it up. Remix, right? Like, but things that I think is often brought up metaphysically, especially a little bit lately, but there's not a lot of, I don't know that there's a lot of great resources on the topic. When we build a lifetime, we would say that there would be things called contracts.
Yes.
And I would like to ask you how frequently, like how common contracts are in a generic average lifetime, and sort of what the topics they surround. 100 of them, not that many.
And that's and that's a really good question, because I feel like sometimes the contracts are very much determined by the soul, how many contracts there will be. Okay, because we recognize there are very many variables when you're dealing with people. You've got one person who never leaves the house, and then you've got one person who is a musician or an entertainer, and they're constantly around hundreds to thousands of people. So we realize that based on one's life, whatever that is from one to the next, if you're let's give a little scenario, for instance. Say I'm I'm not going to use me because I don't want to exit anytime soon, not putting that up in the mindset of the spirit world. But say someone, for instance, goes to the other side. They pass, they go to the other side, however long time is, because time doesn't really exist in the same way in the spiritual world. But they decide they're going to incarnate. They're going to come back. They're going to do it again. They're all excited, and they're being asked some basic questions. Okay, what do you want to do this time? Last time you were a hermit. You didn't leave your house. You lived in the woods. You didn't get married, and you only had bobcats as pets, and so
that sounds
there wasn't
so nice,
really much.
Though.
I know. I could have really embellished that and been just fine.
Yeah, that'd
have been really good. We recognize that maybe the next lifetime, okay, I think I'll come back. I'm going to do different things. This time I want to be a public speaker. I want to give messages to my audience on whatever, maybe career building, job building, whatever it may be. Well, I'm going to put different contracts out there than I would have if I'm still in the cabin, watching the pretty kitties from the other side of the window, right? So I would have a different contract, a series of contracts. Now, what does that mean? Do I have a contract on everything? I'm going to contract that I'm going to be a good person in this lifetime, sign on the dotted line. Am I going to contract to be a bad person in this lifetime, sign on the bottom line? I really feel it has more to do with others. I don't really feel that. I feel like we do a lot of verbal contracts with ourselves. And in verbal contracts, we do that all the time. How many times have we said, today I'm going to clean my house?
Amen.
Boom. Exactly.
It's 3 p.m. Not today.
Not today. Well, that's why today's the best word of all. Tomorrow's today. But we realize, when we didn't satisfy that contract, we don't want to, be shackled and taken, to heaven, right?
Because will.
It's free will. That's exactly right. So if we have contracts, which we do here, and I do believe in contracts, I've seen plenty of people that come to Earth, and they will come to see me, and and I hear the woes. I hear all about this life's miserable. This has happened. That's happened. This has happened. That's happened. This has happened. Well, I could really approach it two ways. Fortunately, I like the lighter side of the ways. I could say, well, you contracted it. Sorry, just suck it up. Go get yourself some meds, right? I'm not going to do that, obviously. I'm also a life coach. So that isn't a wise approach, right? And plus, I can't prescribe anything because I'm not a medical doctor, I'm a medical empath,
Right.
right?
Yes.
So couldn't say that. So probably what would be best served is you probably have gotten yourself kind of caught up in some contracts. I feel like there's some people around you that you probably are having issues with, or you're not fitting in, you're not feeling like they understand you, and you kind of, kind of basically bedded down with them. You're in a contract with them. Whether the contract came from the soul level or the contract came from the fact that you've got a marriage certificate in your closet in a box, you've contracted on some level. So now we have to look and see, is this contract a valid contract for you? Is this contract working in growth? Is this contract helping you? Maybe you needed to come here and be miserable for a little bit so you could figure out how to be unmiserable, right? Just because you're miserable today. Yeah. Maybe being miserable today is really an empowerment for you to get better in the future. Maybe that's what it's about. Maybe it was all about growth in the first place. So we don't really know precisely what you've done as far as your contracts. For me, just like I always laugh when I say this, and I do mean this very sincerely. When someone said, who wants the whacked out parents? I got 2 psychos here. Who wants them? I put both hands to give them both to me. I'll take them. Well, I contracted for that. Now, people would say, well, what's wrong with you? Are you an idiot? Why would you contract for that? Well, I may have contracted for that because it was one heck of a learning experience. Maybe I needed to see how evil people could be. Or who knows, maybe I was one of them two lifetimes ago, and now my contracts are coming into payment. So you never know.
That's a fascinating, because there's 2 ways to theoretically look at, there's so many ways, right? But in exactly your example, it could be that the larger picture contract is you are going to be a healer, you are going to work in the metaphysical space to do so.
Yes.
That is the contract you signed. But to get there, did we get so detailed that we said, well, for me to access at that level, to be the healer that I need to be this lifetime, I didn't know it was going to cost this. I didn't know it was going to require my parents to be serial killers, but that still fulfilled the greater life contract. Or do you think it was so minute when you said, okay, not only am I saying yes to the parents that are nuts in this way, like you see what I mean?
Oh, I see exactly what you mean. And I feel like it's a combination of both. On a soul level. And think of it this way. And this is the part that sometimes it's kind of confusing, but I'm going to put it in the best way to explain it. On a soul level, we don't have a real genuine understanding of what things are, what they would cost a human, what they would cost energy. Okay. We just know them as events. So if we say, while we're in a nice spirit energy, if we say, you know what, I know cancer is a very deadly disease downstairs, however you want to look at it. I'd like to experience so I can see how I can help people maybe in the next lifetime to cope. So when they do that, again, the term itself means nothing. I could have said it like, anything like, factor 45. Okay, I'll take factor 45. I don't know what it means, but I'll take it. So it's not like we're going, I'm a brave soul. I know exactly what that's going to do to my body.
No. And the payment's not going to be that lifetime. Like, it's not even for that lifetime. That is very of the thoughts of contracts.
It is
fascinating.
And then we get in the contract and we're like, I don't want that. No, thank you. And we may be fortunate enough to eradicate it. It could be very well treated. And we've got just enough experience in this, 6 months that we've had it to know that that's good enough. Or we may end up, leaving this earth because of this illness. Can we break a contract? I do believe we can break contracts. Okay. Now, I'm a little uncertain about the exit, because I do believe that contract is a pretty powerful contract. How you exit seems to me to be consistent. And when I say consistent, if you pay attention to what people say, you sort out a little bit of what their end game is going to be based on a little bit of who they are.
I feel like I'm about to get the biggest cheat code ever.
No, no, I'm not gonna reveal all of that. I can't. I won't. But if you spend time with someone and you watch their movements, you watch their actions, you watch their developments, you watch what they say, what jobs they undertake, how they treat other people, you start seeing a little bit of a characteristic develop. And it's terrible. And please don't take this too, because I know there's going to be someone out there that's going to go, I can't believe she said that. But there are many athletes that still die even though they're extremely in good shape, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe that sometimes the subconscious mind goes in and goes, you contracted to have a heart attack. You better get your butt out there and get some exercise. You see?
Yeah.
And so you go and you get really in fit, and the next thing you know, you tumble down off the track one day with a heart attack or an aneurysm or a stroke. So we do see not only are there physical features to the exit. I mean, how many people have said in the medical community that there are markers that determine early on when someone is predisposed to Alzheimer's or dementia or to stroke or all the other major heavy hitters. And so if you look at that as energy, we play out a life, but I do feel that for the life, we do sort of already know how we're going to leave it, and so is it something that we should go digging and deep and get, I'm never going to be the one that's going to say to someone, I know how you're dying.
No, that would be nuts. No. Yeah. I think there'd be some pretty negative karma to that. I would imagine, and there's no way that would be appropriate.
It would, exactly. And think of, negative karma, and think of the action.
Because you take the free will away. If I told some
of those, right. And if I told all those people that were driving 110 down one of our busy freeways then now they would do 125 because they would know that they were safeguarded against a car accident.
Mm-mm.
So there's no real good justice. If you hear it or you sense it, you feel it, you're better off just keeping quiet. Now, if you say to someone, listen, you're struggling to breathe, you're struggling, to walk around, I'm going to suggest as a life coach that you go and you do XYZ. Well, it's not me saying, well, you're going to die of emphysema when you're 78.
Lord have mercy, right.
Right. Because it may end up being something totally different.
Well, and from a mediumship perspective, I've been there around you when a loved one has come and told you, and they'll be seeing them soon. And again, that's never something that you share, but you told me that because at the time I was a student of you. It was like I was see that message, but the question was, I felt like our healing hadn't been healing. And I said, why were they supporting the spine instead of doing anything intrinsic? And you said at the end of it that her husband had visited and basically, so we got kind of the same information, but very, very different. And for me, it was confusing. For you, it's like, well, no, that checks out because she's about to go soon.
Right.
What do you say if somebody is desiring that and is like in the older demographic where maybe life is not the enjoyable thing it used to be? Right. What do you feel when they ask you? Because I know you've been asked. Like,
I get asked.
Almost done.
And that's a really hard question because I do really go into spirit because the Terri in me doesn't want that kind of responsibility.
No, yeah, good point.
So the Terri in me, if I was to step out of me right now even and say, okay, I'm Brutus, that's my primary, how would that be best received? How would I handle that? And I'm hearing from my Brutus, then what we would say was, I know that life has been very complicated for you thus far. And I do know that there's much thought that goes into the other side, the exit strategy. But I do see that there's some valuable time left, and it would be in your best interest to make it count. Visit loved ones, go write that letter, make those apologies, go live the beat of life, go live that sound, go live in the moment. And again, sometimes they'll say, and I do have people ask me that, they'll say, well, what? And again, my guides are very, very good at that. They're very astute at that. It would probably sound something like, well, your favorite season is the summer. Enjoy the ones ahead of you. Do you see?
Wow, so, yeah.
You see that, so it's really truly, it's getting feedback, it's giving feedback, but it's not. And there are times, I will tell you, I have clients with loved ones. I have one that happened this weekend, this Friday. In fact, I'm going to reach out to her son today. I meant to do that. She was communicating, her and her brother. Her brother was in full spirit. She was in the IC unit of a hospital, and her family had been called to come near because they couldn't treat her pneumonia because she was septic, and there was just so many drugs in her body that they knew that they would kill this elderly woman. So we can temporarily ask spirit to help her to kind of get in a better place. So that's more for the family. Okay, that's more for the family. The fact of the matter is, she's going to exit. And I did tell the family, I said, there's an important date that was scheduled for today. There's a very important date that they celebrate in festivity that they celebrate in India today. And so I asked this the son who reached out to me, I asked him to gather his family and his sister and to go partake in this event, because his mother needed to see this come through, as a way of her knowing that as she left these children, that they would have each other's back. And her brother was there in spirit. And he said it won't be good to wait till Monday. So they would have done that yesterday.
Oh my gosh. And so I remember that. So we understand that the cause or the experience around the death has a tendency to be pretty under contract, but there seems to be some manipulation of time, in that you can go a little bit earlier than expected, or you can stay a bit later than expected. Okay.
Yes.
And can that be a dramatic amount, or does there seem to be kind of a window? Like, if you're not intended to make it to old age.
It's usually a window. I don't usually see it being a very long timeline. You know how many times have we heard from others that their loved one was waiting until someone came in from out of town to pass, that they were waiting for someone to come say goodbye.
Okay,
that they hadn't made amends with someone, so they were waiting for that person to show up.
Okay, yeah.
And there are times that I have said to people, when they've told me they've had a very sick loved one, I have said this, I connect to them, and it's really easy to connect to someone who is on basically in the stage of death, especially when they are
than here.
Yes, and especially in their resting state, because they are more there. So it's like connecting to spirit, like I would connect in mediumship to spirit. I know they're still not gone, but most of them is.
Yeah.
And they will say to me sometimes, I'm holding on because my son hasn't called me. And so when I hear that, or my daughter hasn't reached out to me, then I will say to the family, and I'm very straight about what I say. It doesn't matter on this level. It doesn't matter if, the mother was a horrible person to this child. I'm still going to say, she's telling me that she can't go until this person acknowledges that she's leaving.
Dang.
And I will say, I don't care what you need to do. If this person lives in Timbuktu, you get a phone, you get a chat, you put it on basically volume, and you let, even if she's in a coma, you let this woman, this mother, whomever it may be, hear this voice, because this is what's holding her back.
And I've seen it. Oh, sorry.
I've seen it be kind of the exit. It's where things changed. Yes.
And then what sort of would happen in the more, is there a relationship around, like, when we think contracts as far as the birth and the death, is the birth equally as certain, or does that have more leeway?
And that's a really good question, because I firmly believe, and I'm not sure if this belief system is orchestrated for me, because I have had miscarriages, and I don't look at life as death. Like, I don't look at it like they died and they'll never be. I didn't look at it. I looked at it more like it was the poor timing. It wasn't time for them to be born, or maybe they were not really mine in the first place. You see? And so those that are born that come through, I do believe, and we've seen so many people that have had children that were never meant physically to have a baby, but did because it just so happened. Those that were on a lot of protective measures and still had children, we see it all the time. So is that as stringent, as strict as the death process? I'm not really sure. I don't really know. But I do know that there must be some plan of action, because I've seen some very unusual circumstances where, a mother has carried a child to term, but she had, severe anemia, all the heavy hitting blood disorders that would clot and create death in an embryo and in a child. She would carry this baby. And so we do see that there must be something also working in that energy to create. And I do believe that it is very sad to lose a baby, but I really come to the understanding that it's about timing with some of this.
Yeah.
And whatever that means, it wasn't an appropriate time for that child,
and
or maybe
free
that
will.
child was in free will, right? Maybe this child needed to be your sister's baby. Maybe this child needed to be someone else's baby, or maybe this child decided at the last minute, this soul said, I think I'll stay here for a while.
Oh my God, that's such a wild thought. But yeah, that has to, I mean, because I'm sure people get gun shy all the time, especially as newer souls.
Yes.
Well, and too, if, say you're a normative, healthy female, and then you lose your mom or something, and you go down this darker pathway, but you were contracted to have a baby, but that baby didn't contract to have any kind of disorders or, malnutrition. So it's like, never mind, you make some free will decisions.
Right.
Yeah, like if everything had been kosher, I would still be, and that's not blaming a mother. I'm just saying, like, as far as the timing go, it has to do with us in the living world too. So it makes sense that it would be a bit more penciled in, maybe, because we're always changing. We can't control what a mother is going to do. She's loose from source in some ways, like we're always changing, but that decision making, it's like she's halfway through her contract anyway. And that soul is probably like, I need to be very careful how this works for me.
Right. Well,
and death is not that way.
No, exactly. And it is hard because, I'm not really trying to stoke the fire to a conversation about religion, but we see it all the time with those that, have had multiple miscarriages or can't get pregnant. They've not been able to get pregnant. And I hear the message being, I must have done something wrong. I'm being punished. God told me no, I can't have babies because God doesn't think I'm a good mother. And I hear all this, just almost this like self-loathing that comes through. And I'm going to have to say, and again, there is no exact science here, obviously, but I've never been compelled to say the man upstairs doesn't like you.
Yeah, or there's a punitive thing here.
Right, as a punitive thing. I feel there's a lot of moving parts. This is, again, according to your faith, if this is the man upstairs, he gave you free will, right?
Yeah. Oh, and that's the heaviest thing.
Well, he gave you free will. He didn't say, I'm the only one that decides your life. He said quite the opposite. So please, those that are struggling, don't go there and now assume that you are a horrible person because your body cannot produce a baby or whatever the situation may be. That's a very derogatory way to nurture a soul. And the soul's yours.
That brings us to the idea, and I don't know, I don't have a staunch opinion. I think I have an idea, but with the contracts that we can always, they're there for us to sign. But is it true, for instance, that you could, if you were supposed to be if you were supposed to be a mother, but then you needed to have extra hot girl summers, and then something changed in your body and that was no longer viable, that just means that you have other contracts that will move forward. But motherhood was not in that traditional way, went unsigned.
Right.
Because free will.
It's free will. If you were contracted to have 4 kids and all of a sudden you go get a hysterectomy, guess what? You're not having 4 kids.
Do you think that changes, because kind of what we talked about with you, where maybe the end goal was to be a very talented healer, the parlay of contracts said this happens, But in that case, maybe if motherhood was a major contract, you did free will away from it. Is there sort of like a plan B? No, no pun intended to what we were talking about earlier, but
I love it. I love it.
is there another avenue, say like a if then, where it's like, okay, I had a bunch of contracts around motherhood and parenting, or does it get more into like, oh wow, well now you're kind of like free range, I guess? Like, how does that go?
Oh, absolutely. I feel, again, now I'm going to say something that most people will not really probably resonate with or disagree with. Who said the soul was perfect?
Right.
Exactly. At least if it's in a human body, it's not perfect, right?
So it's probably expected that we miss some of these.
Yes.
God, that's so relieving, though. I mean, that like makes me feel good, oddly.
Right. Well, like anything else, even something going back to for me, it's something that I could wrap my head around. Yes, I may have contracted to have the environment and to be raised in an environment such as I was, but I did have 3 choices.
Yeah.
And I did. I had 3 choices, and one day in particular, it became quite clear what those choices were.
Wow.
Okay. I could either kill myself and be done with this lifetime and go home, and I don't mean earthbound home, but go home and go, oh, hell no, that was a little too much. You can have it back. I'm going to do something else. Okay. Or I could have been an evil person, because that was an option too. I'd have made a really good evil person. I would have. But I also had a third choice. And the third choice was to be the best I could be, to help all that I could. And that to me was also about a contract. So maybe that was plan B. I don't know which one was plan B.
Wow. Oh my God. That's scary. That's fascinating. Because, well, okay. So now I get so curious. So imagine like remember when we were kids and you would get like different stickers to indicate how well you did because you weren't really being graded yet on a comprehensive scale. But like maybe
I'm gonna go with a yes because I never had a sticker.
Like a gold star.
I know what you're talking about.
But then someone might just like if you don't do that great, you get a rainbow, and everyone knows that's not as good as a gold star. Like.
Oh, I love that. I want a rainbow and a sticker.
I wonder if it's like, all right, if you had done the kind of the obvious choice, which would be to go evil, that you would have gotten the rainbow because that was kind of almost easier, intuitive pathway.
Right.
Because you chose the harder way, there is that gold star element where you're like, okay, well, we chomped through a lot of evolution by taking this very bent, windy, other much harder way.
Right.
And yet they're all 3 as contracts.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, that's so scary though.
Oh, well, it is, but it's also invigorating, which shows us that we do have the option of free will. No matter where we are in the state of growth, that is such a key factor. And yes, sometimes it could get in our way. When we have free will to do something that puts us even further in a ditch, right? I mean, if I would have gone evil, that would have been a real rotten thing, right?
There's still time, Terri. Come on.
I know. It's so funny. I said this to I did to a group one time, and I thought it was funny because I like to get everyone laughing. Really, I in my next life I'm going to be a comedian entertainer, just so you know. I did. I said, and that time I was like 50, and so I'm a little older than that. We'll just leave it there. And I said, well, look, I'm 50 and I haven't killed anyone yet.
Yes.
I thought that was hilarious. I thought that was so funny. And they looked at me like, shoot, she's going to do something. And I really thought, I just went, no, don't worry, everyone's safe. And I thought, damn.
Well, a sensitive crowd perhaps, but.
I know. I was like, wow. I have to keep that in mind, not to be so open like that. But
and then how many contract system, if birth and death have unique qualities around them as far as contracts? You mentioned something briefly earlier of how often then are we intermixed with what people always call clearing karma? Is that real? Is that a thing that is important? Is that something that we do? We settle debts with other energies through contracts? It is real. Okay. That's interesting.
I love that. question. And you know what's really cool to me? I'm a firm believer in karma. Now, what I mean is, I'm a firm believer in karma, but I don't always see karma as other people see karma.
I agree.
So we have a subset of people that don't believe there's anything of karma, that karma existed to keep basically people in check. That karma is just, it's kind of like the brimstone, right?
Yeah.
That it ties into, it's either a loving God or, an evil God. And so I know that karma has a whole lot of different meanings for a whole lot of different people.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe in karma. And the way I look at karma is if you can change every day by doing something that's kinder, wiser, smarter, better than you did the day before, whether you're saying, my karma says I need to be nice to this person, or I was a mean person I was told in my past life, so I'm even nicer this lifetime. If that's what's motivated you to make a difference in a cruel world, then have at it.
Mm-hmm.
I am a firm believer of that. I am not the person, though, that takes an innocent soul who's had a horrible life and tell them, oh, yeah, you lost that job, your husband left you, your car broke down, you're really paying off some karma here, I'm probably going to, if I say it, I'm going to joke about it for a second to show her how it doesn't really line up. And then I'm going to say, you're not just practicing karma. You're having just some bad circumstances. Okay?
Right.
And free will is going to help you to get out of the ditch, or the free will is going to make you stay in the ditch because you think you deserve this.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And we don't want to deserve all these horrible things that you think you are a bad person. That's why you got them. Okay.
Yeah.
And so karma has a whole lot of different meanings to a whole lot of different people. I said one time, I said this to someone in the center that I work with. I said, to me, karma in a lot of ways is what keeps us from being monkeys in the trees. And he was, what do you mean by that? Well, karma gives us boundaries. It gives us a human stance on things. And I like monkeys. I'm not picking on monkeys. So for all the monkeys out there listening to me, I got your back too. But meaning, we would not evolve. We'd just be sitting up in a tree, just kind of, with nothing else going on. And so karma also helps us to think. It can have a positive effect and make us better people.
Well, I always say something that I think is a little bit bold, and this goes into sometimes the doubts I have, because sometimes I think you have these strong opinions about these pretty important topics. How could you be right? Like, how could you think you're right? But right. I don't know. I feel strongly about this, but I would be open if you think this is inaccurate. I have a tendency to say is that karma is the thing it is. It is a record of what has happened, period.
Yes.
And then as opposed to it being much of an active force in the here and now, it deals more in what is done when you're done. And it's kind of this understanding of here's the ways that you positively influence people, negatively harmed, assisted. It's a record. And it is what then kind of informs our spiritual pathway forward, because it doesn't, we can't skip. So whatever vibration you pass in, you have to, karma requires that you come in at that same vibration. And that's a struggle sometimes. If you've been ill-behaved, your circumstances will be at the same vibration as your activity, so to speak. Whereas,
that's right.
Like you said, active energy, the more active, like if you want to say rules of the universe in the physical world are free will. And then that thing we talked about where certain melodies just don't choose to not exist near each other. So, I think people think karma is if you steal from somebody and then you get stolen from, oops, that's karma. And I think that's not karma. That is the rule that if you are the type to steal, you will only be able to engage and play in the sandbox as those that also would steal. And the odds are eventually maybe you'll be stolen from, because that's your demographic, because that's your actions right in the here and now.
It's your action. Right.
Okay, because that's what I just think people think karma is so active, or that it has, you can add intent to it and have it do your work. And I'm like, karma is a log, and it is logging everything.
Right. Yes, it's just logging everything. That's exactly right. I recently had an experience, and I don't know necessarily it had a heavy impact on me. But I had a woman who had been, again, very stressed, very, very just worn down woman with a very autistic child. But this child could walk. So this child was brought to, she brought her with her for a reading. And the child just sat there and was a lot of, the zoning out. And that's part of the process of it. And just sat there. And while we were talking to mom was saying, I think, we talked to karma for a minute because she brought it up. She said, well, I must be a horrible person to pay back all this karma by having her.
While she's right there.
While she's right there. And again, a very, very deep, significant level of disability.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought, okay. I looked over at the girl and I said intuitively, I didn't say it out loud. I looked over at the girl and I said, I know you're in there. And this girl looked up like this at me and said, yes. And her mother went, what? And I said, she's listening to us.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, no, I don't know why she did that, but no.
Mm-mm.
And I looked at her mother. I said, you have no idea how intelligent she is, do you?
Mm-hmm.
And the girl looked at me, and that's hard for someone who's autistic to do.
Mm-hmm.
Looked at me and gave me a big smile.
Mm-hmm.
So karma, we also have to keep in mind when we are talking about karma, some families really feel like they are being punished because they have a loved one that they have to take care of.
Yeah.
They feel like karma is their curse. It's their sledgehammer over the top of the head. They look at it as like, that life is a burden to them. Their circumstances created a huge burden. They must be paying karma. And I struggle with those kind of things because yes, it means that your life probably is different.
Mm-hmm.
But you're saying that it's just a chore, nothing more. So something's not right there. You see?
Yeah. Well, and that falls to me a little bit. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but it almost seems like to be a custodian in such a full way, that falls to me under like a contract thing. Wouldn't you think?
It does feel more like a contract, yes.
And so, but so what is a version though of more like what is clearing, right? Like what would it look like for two people who have work to do on a karmic level, whatever that really means? What would that meeting of life look like in the theoretical to you?
Well, we see it all the time in bad marriages, right?
Mm.
Bad relationships.
Mm-hmm.
We see incompatibility. We see very, very stubborn energies playing out a role. It's the greatest play, right?
Yeah.
They come here, they have a playbill, and now they're reacting the playbill, acting out what they're here to do.
Yeah.
There are many times that they break the contract, right? That's why divorce is so, popular in the U.S. So we recognize that they do play out their karma. They do break their contract for karma. Sometimes they play it out, but then they come to an understanding that they're all tuckered out and done with playing it out.
Yeah.
And then they find a new beginning, and they learn how to interact with each other outside of their original contract. So therefore, they create a new contract. They've broken the old, they've released the old, they still are together. And so then they have to kind of get to basically a new place. We do see contracts all the time. We see them between employer and employee.
Mm-hmm.
We see them between relative to relative, family to friend, friend to family. We see them with strangers. There's contracts we have that are very probably minuscule.
Well, there's open contracts too, right? Because if you have to be a victim, all you need is someone to be the perpetrator. It doesn't really matter who it is.
No, it doesn't.
Man, so in that scenario then where I've said this and it's not landed well, but I feel strongly that this is true. If you have somebody that feels like what people say a soulmate is, I get this feeling of like, that's not because you're so in love that you have chosen to do this life with them again, especially as you get into middle and older souls type things. I have a feeling that if you have somebody that is in that way, there's something that needs to be done well and right this time. And maybe it's the separation. Maybe that you handle it better. Maybe, you aren't as mean or you don't take as long. But I'm almost a little bit gun shy of that feeling of when we met, the moment we met, we were drawn to each other. because I'm like, oh no, what did we do wrong last time? And what are we supposed to do right this time? You know, because that's the only reason it would be there, right?
Well, and very well could be. We recognize that soulmates don't have to be a love language. They don't have to be an intimate relationship. You can have a soul relationship with your next door neighbor as a soulmate. You know, with your teacher, you know, with whomever. You know, with your sister's boyfriend, you know, you can have a soulmate connection to people, but you're right. And if you look at it from that perspective, it goes hand in hand with what you're saying. If that's the case, then we come together because we have something that we need to finish, good or bad. Something is connected to us.
And it's so I mean, it feels so unfair because the work that we have to do to grow our soul is hard.
Yes.
Hard. And it's like, if two people come together and they're supposed to do 5 years or whatever, you know, the contract might be, it's like, unless I guess maybe you get a rest when your lifetime is a rest lifetime where you're like, I am so overwhelmed and I've had a crazy couple. Maybe I'd just like to have a nice, like, you know, like you said, hermit with my bobcat.
Right.
Then that could be a positive, pretty easy. But we recognize the soul is not doing all that much work, so to speak.
Right.
So it's like,
that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. And, you know, we talked about twin flames before, and I always tell people, don't get all excited about it. When I tell them, oh, you two are twin flames, what I just did is hand you this proverbial workbook. And now you're going to have to work at it, because twin flames, unless you are right there where you're supposed to be magnetically, vibrationally connected, that twin flame energy is just a big pain in the butt. Because they have the most emotion. You feel the most out of control. You feel the most fearful. Everything about it is an uptick in emotion. So unless your twin flame is with you on the same level, that energy is not so great.
Do you think it gets people, their lifetime up more than it benefits?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I do. And I struggle with that with clients, because I've had to tame the beast in a lot of clients. You can't stalk him. Don't stalk him. Do not go stalk him. I've had to do that. I have had, in men too. You cannot leave her 25 messages. She doesn't want you right now. It's a bad deal. Oftentimes twin flames can tear your heart up. You have to keep them in perspective. They're only viable if you're at the same place at the same time, in growth and in connection.
The easy contracts.
I know. I want some of those. I want the contract that says you need an ice cream cone every day at noon. I'm signing that one for 5 years, right? We can go up to 5 years. I think 5 years is great.
Terri, I just love you.
I love you too. There are good contracts. I mean, obviously there are good contracts. Heck, we make them every day with ourselves, right? I am going to go to the gym. It's a verbal contract, right? Yes. So we recognize there is some stealth in a verbal contract. It doesn't mean that it's all null and void because it's not signatured. We do those type of contracts all the time. And we can break them all the time. How many times have we said, today's the day, I'm going to stop eating all the sugar. And the next thing you know, you're sitting there munching the cereal out of the cereal box because you threw out all the Twinkies, right?
Oh, man. And I guess the last question I would have is, do you agree when these contracts are drawn up that it's very guided? Or do you think two people unguided can be like, let's just try something? Like, how guided do you feel that they are? Or proctored, I guess?
Well, you know, this might be me, because I like to be a little unguided sometimes. I like to be the free-for-all. I like to be, okay, you want a contract to what? We're going to start an ant farm. Cool, let's do this. You keep the ants because I don't like them.
Right.
And I'll buy all the materials.
And I'll plan it. I'll blueprint them.
Yeah, right. And how fun that will be, and it'll come to fruition, and then I'll be like, I'm done. That was it.
Yeah.
Yes, I do feel that. I feel that we can make contracts all the time, anytime. It goes into the same, it's really, think of it this way too. It goes into the same momentum, the same opportunities as when we teach people to go outside and go see something you haven't seen. Now, and
Mhm.
they're like, well, I walk the same walk every day, but when's the last time you actually looked? When's the
Mhm.
last time you actually saw what you walked by?
Mhm.
Right? This time, pay attention. Make those contracts. Contracts were not always meant to be, brimstone. They weren't
Mhm.
always meant to be drudgery. They're meant to be fun and exist because we have the free will to keep them or not.
I feel like that's the part where when we forget what sorrow feels like and we forget how hard disease is, and we're like, oh man, let's just load it up. I feel
Load it up.
determined. I feel safe. And then you get there and you're like, oh boy, I've really added quite a bit now, huh?
Exactly. I do feel that there's a lot of contracts that are negotiable.
Yeah.
Really, I really do.
Mhm.
And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful to know that we are kept to the human standards.
Yeah.
We can make mistakes,
Love
and I
that
call them the
though.
standards. It's what
I
it
do and I
is.
don't, but it's what is. So it doesn't really matter how we feel about it.
Right. It is what is. That is exactly right.
Yeah.
It's and I truly don't believe most, and I do mean this. Excuse me, and it's a little contradictory, but if people that do cruel things, and are just not good people, and they'll say, "Well, this is what I've signed up for." Well, yeah. Well, you might want to rethink some of those contracts because you're not a nice person. You're not a good person. Your behavior is horrible. Go find another
And you don't
contract.
like it.
Right. And you
That's the
don't
other
like it.
thing.
You're using it as a ladder to do more things. Yeah.
I
Love it.
wonder about, when we get upset with our circumstances. Well, they're very rarely fully accidental. Sometimes they are,
Right.
right? Maybe that gets
Sometimes
into
they
more
are.
contract stuff where it's like, this came out of the blue and I'm having to deal with it. And maybe, but if it's
Right.
like,
Right.
we do have to recognize it's forcing us to sign anything. Nobody is forcing us to do there. That was all predetermined when we came in. And then they said, go. And now everything past that point is up to us. And I get nervous sometimes when people say, what's meant to me for me won't ever pass me by. And they'll say things like, I know, if it's meant to be, it'll be. That's giving up so much of our responsibility to like take action. It's
Right.
dicey. You're never going to land where you think you will with that mentality because that's not how it
No.
works.
No, it isn't how it works. And sometimes that term, now I'll say that term, it'll be what it'll be. At times when I know that at some point you just have to sit back and either rethink a plan or you
Right.
just say, that it's okay for it to just stalemate for a moment and sit and not do a thing. But you're right. You can't rely on these things. Those are not active ways.
Well, and you mean, by the way, you mean that phrase in acceptance of what is. But I agree with you on that. I'm use of like, I say I want to be a mental health professional, but then if it will be, it will be in this future where I make no effort towards it, but yet it will be. I'm like, dude, what are we talking about? What world are we in right now? That's not how it goes.
That's not how it goes. It goes with this hand in hand with the phrase of someday. My favorite, expression. Someday.
I said that yesterday, or I said that Saturday to somebody.
No.
Yep, it's in the vernacular now. I say that a lot.
I love it. Well, it doesn't exist. It's a catch-all, right?
It is.
I love it.
Well, we have done it.
We have done it. Oh my gosh, we've done it. I love it too. And really, if there are people out there that have questions,
yes,
they should ask them, right?
Yes. And we have been getting a couple comments and a lot just of support. And then people are coming up in person. It's been amazing.
I love it. I've had a few people do that as well. And I just love it. Where this is a community, involvement. If you have questions or you want a reading, I just know that there are a lot of people that this resonates with and some of you that don't. And if you got a comment, if it's nasty and mean and hostile, don't worry, we'll delete it. But if it is positive, we'll keep it. Hey, I'm being realistic.
Our experience with, what we say we believe, I'm like, we're so interested in why you have come to believe what you believe. Like, it's a dialogue. It's not
Absolutely.
It's a concrete thing that if you don't, believe what we believe, get out.
No, not at all. Oh my gosh, let's talk. Let's figure it out together. There's so much wonder in our world. Maybe your perspective is totally different, but maybe it's pretty cool and we need to know about it.
When we don't also know that the rules you and I have experienced, there might be a whole subset of souls that function in a different way that we aren't given the keys to those kingdoms. Like, we don't know.
We don't
have
know.
experience, and that's what we try to share.
That's exactly right. And, you know, we really love people. We really love the audience. We really love our listeners. We know that this is taking a bit of your day, and we appreciate your interaction with us. We appreciate your support. You know, if you sign up to listen to us, give us a thumbs up, give us whatever you feel we deserve. If not, ask Mindy. I'll take your sweater and keep it forever.
Yeah. And we'll link all the contact below. And thank you guys so much for spending time with us again. We'll see you next week, though. Terri, I love
Raise
you.
both hands to say bye-bye.
Bye. I love you.
Bye.